I'm Joyce Zurcher. I was born in Wilmot, Ohio, to Nelson and Lillian Schoenauer Yoder. And we lived in Wilmot on Main Street, right across from the elementary school. And lived there all my life till I married Orion.
And what did your parents do?
My father worked on Brewster on the railroad. He had a number of jobs because he was a World War I veteran, and he worked for the WPA. That was the works program through the government, helped build the road from Wilmot to Beach City, and that was a paved road then. It was one lane cement road. And then he worked in the on the railroad, and odd jobs wherever he could find, because we lived with my grandma, and they had some other relatives living with us because they were on hard times and lost their home, and they moved in with us. It was my mother's brother and his family, Schoenauers. They lived with us probably a year maybe, and my father was the only one who could find work and was trying to feed us all. There was 12 of us around the table for 3 meals a day. So it was really tough going. Mm-hmm. But Grandma and my mom did a lot of the cooking, and I know they fixed beans, I think, 750 ways, but it fed us anyway. And baked. I know on Friday was bake day, and they would make homemade bread and always cookies, because the boys that were living with us, they loved cookies, and they baked the cookies, and that was a big day. A whole day they baked.
How old were you when you lived with your grandmother?
We always lived with Grandma lived. I thought for a long time that Grandma lived with us, but then in later years I found out we lived with Grandma. So she lived this until she died in 1941. And then we lived there well, there was me and my sister, and we had a brother, was between my sister and I, and he got diphtheria and died when he was 8 years old. And my mother never got over that. And we were quarantined. We couldn't have anybody in for the service or anything. They just had to bear it alone. The preacher stood on the front porch and did a little sermon. We could listen through the open window or a door, but nobody could come in. So it was a very hard time.
Yeah.
And I remember one time, I don't know how old I was, but I was out on the front porch with my grandma, and I said, "Grandma, I'll never laugh again." You know, because it was so sad. My mom just cried all the time. And she said, "Oh, yes, you will. This too shall pass. Mm-hmm. And you'll smile and laugh again."
Grandma was a wise woman.
Grandma was a wise little German woman.
Yeah.
With a family of 12 in her family.
Wow.
So she was...
And what about your grandfather at that time? Was he there?
My grandfather, Schoenauer, he lived there too. He published the Wilmot Review paper, and it was all around surrounding areas. Got the little paper that the Wilmot Review printed. I still have some of them. Okay. But, yeah, and then he died of cancer, I guess. At that time, they called it printer's ink, a disease from the printer's ink. And my mom set type for them. They had the old type where you set the letters and.
Did that ever affect her? Did
No,
she have any?
no. I guess she never. Well, he was always around it, but she wasn't. But no, it never affected her. But that's what he died of, and he died in. I wasn't born then yet. It was in 1920. I'm not really sure when. 23 or 24 maybe. I don't know what year it was.
Now your brother died of diphtheria.
Mm-hmm.
Was that common?
Yeah, there was more cases around. They thought he had got it at Bible school. They didn't have water at the church, and there's this old lady lived beside the church. We'd always go to Mealy's. They'd call Mealy's and pump this water. And they thought that it was the water. The health department thought it was the water that he had, and somebody had the throat was sore or something, and that's how it spread. And I don't know. I don't really know. I know my dad and my sister got it too, but they didn't get it as hard as what my little brother had it. He died in Altman Hospital. They took him up there and lanced his throat, cut it so he could breathe. And then it got in the bloodstream and it killed him. Then
Were there any other diseases that were going on at that time?
Well, like some of measles they used to quarantine for, and smallpox. Those scarlet fever. Them are all quarantine diseases. Yeah, you get this big orange sign on your door, and nobody could come in, and you couldn't come out. My grandpa would get groceries. My dad's father would get us groceries still and bring them up and set them on the porch, and then they'd go out and get it then. But,
do you remember how long that was for?
I'm not sure how long they were quarantined. If it was like it was before and even after they thought you were well or you were better, they still wouldn't let you out for a while. So that was probably 15, 20 days, I imagine, the least of the quarantine. They quarantined a lot up until, I don't know, it seemed like till after the war. It was a long time they still quarantined for some of the bad ones. Polio was bad then. It was right after that we all took something for that, the vaccine.
So you were vaccinated for that?
For polio, yeah, we took that.
Was that new then?
Yeah, it was real new then.
Was there a controversy about it?
Well,
Being worried about it?
People didn't want to get it. They was more anxious than they are now. You know, a lot of the diseases that they were quarantined or they were bad for you. Right now they don't bother about it now.
After you were quarantined, was there a stigma attached to it? Did people still not want to
Yeah, for a while they still wouldn't come. You know, they wouldn't come in the house, or they kind of treated you with disdain. I can see why they did, but it's hard when you have little kids that wanted to play with other kids, you know, and they couldn't get together.
So do you remember Pearl Harbor?
I remember Pearl Harbor, yes.
What were you doing?
It was on a Sunday, and we had gone to church, and during this, I think I went in the evening. It was very seldom I don't know why we went in the evening, but that Sunday, we went to church in the evening, and somebody came in and disrupted the service and told about the bombing of Pearl Harbor and that we were now at war. And then on the walk home, I said, "Grandma, what does this mean?" And she said, "Well, it's going to mean that a lot of the people that we know is going to have to go to the service, and it's going to be different." And I said, "Well, they're not going to fight here." That was one of the things that I was worried about, because they never said where we were going to have this war, you know.
Were you aware of the war before that?
Yes, I knew that there was this Hitler, you know, this dictator, and you used to hear him on the radio, you know. We'd get something and he would be hollering, you know, and going on about things, and I knew about him, and I knew he was a bad person, and that something was going to happen, and I just, you know, it was traumatic, and at that time, you know, that you're a family. We didn't have so many outside things, and things that were going on in the world. You talked them over, and you know, and you worried about them as a family. And now it's altogether different, you know, that you hear it on television or something, but it doesn't affect you as much as when it comes, you know, to your door. But,
did your lifestyle change after that?
Yes, it changed. Of course, we had the rationing.
And what all was rationed?
I know the sugar, flour, and oleo and bread. We had to get, you know, standing bread line, and different things that we couldn't, you know, you couldn't buy then. I know Mom couldn't get cocoa, and that was one of the things, you know, and that was just kind of off of the shelves. You didn't, and it was different. We didn't have meat every day or every few days, because that was rationed. And I know we didn't go away because we had gas rationing, and my dad didn't drive too much, and we always had to save our coupons if we really needed something. That we could go down to Garver's in Strasburg or someplace and get shoes, and they were scarce too. It was shoes and material and everything. And they'd always say, "Oh, it's because of the war. It's because of the war. You can't get this or you can't get that." And
did you buy war bonds, or did they ask people to buy?
I remember I had books of the stamps the kids bought. You know, if I got a dime, I could buy a stamp, and then I glue them in these books, these little. You get them at the post office, and yeah, I did buy stamps. My parents bought bonds. They had bond drives. Workers at public places was really pressured into buying bonds.
Now, were you able to return your stamps in later
Yes.
to get your money back? Oh.
Yeah, if I got so many stamps, then I could buy a bond. Then I could get a bond, and then I could start saving my stamps again.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I remember that. And kids, we bought them at school too. if you had some change, you know, you could buy these stamps there too at school, kind of like your March of Dimes or something like that.
What grade were you in?
I was in. I started in '39 to school, so I would have been probably in the second or third grade. But
Did the kids talk about war
Oh
at
yeah,
that age?
oh yeah, yeah. And the boys always wanted to play war games. You know, and the girls could be nurses, and well, they played war all the time. Yeah.
Did you have bombing raids or
Yeah.
alarms? Yeah.
Yeah, and we had blackout curtains in the school that, you know, they put them up to the windows so no light would shine through, or when it looked like there was nobody in the building, I guess. But yeah, we had the blackout curtains, and that was a big thing, you know. Every once in a while you had these drills, and you put the blackout curtains on, you know, and you'd get down, you know, like something was going to happen, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it would scare you. You'd think, well, gee, maybe it was going to happen, you know. When you're that little, you don't really know what's going to come, you know. But I remember all that, yeah. And
You had the curtains at your house?
no, we didn't have them at the house, but we had at night still. Car would come around with a siren on, and you had to turn the lights off, all lights out, and you couldn't have any show of light.
Did you have a place in your house that you went?
Well, mostly just all together in one room. That's where we would all gather. Yeah. And I don't remember having blackout curtains at church. I don't think we did.
Do you remember what your dad was doing at this time?
Well, he was one of the auxiliarymen or whatever they called them, and he had a station where he would go to while the raid was going on, or whatever they would call it, and he would go there, and he would have to man that station, you know, and stay there, stop traffic, and wouldn't let anybody through.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of his jobs.
Yeah. Were you afraid of the Germans or the Japanese? Did you wonder if they were
Bad
living next to
people.
you? I
Yeah.
mean, yeah.
Yeah, and we had little stuff that rhymed about the Emperor of Japan and about Hitler, and you know, little things that rhymed. I don't even remember how it went, but yeah, we had little things like that. Yeah.
Was it part of your lesson plan at school? Did you learn more about Europe or?
Well, you know, your geography kind of covered that. They would show you still where, if something came up, you know, in this town or that town, they would show you maybe on the map where it was located, or if, you know, what was happening. But, yeah, and then you had to go to war, you know, and a lot of friends and people you knew, families were disrupted, and the men were gone, and women were home by themselves, or they went with their husbands, or however it was. And
did you have family that went into the military?
my brother-in-law, they weren't married, and then got married during the war, and she went with him then. And I always thought I couldn't wait for the war to be over, so my sister would come home.
Where did they go to, do you know?
Texas. They were down Texas and Kansas, and I can't remember. I think that was all just Texas and Kansas. So, and we got to go out to Kansas to see her once, and we went on a troop train. or a train. Oh, there was a lot of soldiers on there moving about.
Yeah. What was that like?
Well, that was the first time I was out of Wilmot for, almost.
And
Didn't go very
how
much.
old were you then?
I think it was about 10.
Okay.
Not all good times, anyway.
Did you have any other family members who had gone into the military?
Yes, my first cousins, the ones that had lived with us, and then during the Depression, when everything was tough, they lived with us. And then the boys went to the service, and then Paul was killed in the Battle of the Bulge, and that really tore the family up. He was always the family clown. He was always laughing and joking and getting you into trouble, and he was just a good guy. We really missed Paul when he was gone.
How was that on your aunt and uncle?
Oh, it was really bad. Mom and I went up there and stayed a couple days with her, so my Uncle Merle could go and get some things done that needed to be done. Couldn't leave her alone. She was very, very sad and torn up about it.
How were they notified? Did someone call them, or did someone come to the door?
Someone came. Someone came, and they said they knew when that car drove in their driveway what it was. People kind of knew then, because a lot of them didn't make it back.
Were you aware of that as a young girl, that,
Oh, yeah.
that car and what that
Yeah.
car meant?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was a sad time. Then, to top that off, then my first cousin's son was in the Pentagon and got killed with 9/11. So it was the same drama over again.
Did you know he might have been there at 9/11? Did you know?
No, I didn't know he was there until his father wrote me and sent me write-ups and paper clippings, and
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah, that was bad too.
Now, how did the rations affect you? Were you really aware of it? Or
Oh
was it-
yeah. My mom was she made candy. Oh, at Christmas she would make, I don't know, a dozen kinds of different cookies and candies. She made peanut brittle. She made caramels and Orientals, and it was just, I know out in our pantry it was just box after box of her stuff up there that she made at Christmas. She made peanut clusters, and she made just all kinds of different candy. Well, then when we was rationing, of course there wasn't money to make. Well, the first couple years, my mom took it pretty good that we wouldn't be making any candy. Well, then this year she wanted to, if she could just make a little bit of peanut brittle and just a little bit of caramels or something. And so my dad heard about this guy he would get black market sugar, and he made arrangements, and we had to go over at midnight. We had to go. It was real late and dark. And of course, there was nobody at home that I could stay with, so I had to go along. And so we went over there, and we pulled into this alley, and my dad got out and put up the trunk lid, like an old car we had, and they put a bag of sugar in there, and we didn't talk to him. I don't know who did it. I don't know the man or anything. We pulled away, and then he paid he paid somebody for it then, and I don't know if it was an exorbitant amount or I don't know what he paid, but it was.
Is that the only black market
That I
activity that you know?
Yeah, that I knew about. But, well, I just thought that was so exciting, you know. We're just doing something that we shouldn't have been doing. But she got to make candy.
Did you plant a garden and raise your own?
Oh yes, we always had a garden.
And canning?
Canned. I can remember making applesauce till, you know, we'd have bushel apples and that was one of the things the kids loved to have, was applesauce. And I can remember when we canned or went and froze corn and we took it to Brewster, over 5 Mile there, to put it in the freezer, you know, they had freezers that you could rent.
Oh,
And we'd rent a freezer, or just a drawer or something, and we'd do the corn and because, well, you couldn't beat the corn, the frozen corn.
So now, did you have a refrigerator? You just didn't have a
No,
freezer?
we had an ice box up till, gosh, I think I was pretty up in grade school, and we first got a refrigerator. And the first refrigerator we had a great big the motor on the top of it, and it was from the restaurant downtown. They sold everything out, and my dad bought this refrigerator. Oh, we thought we had something wonderful. We had this refrigerator where we could have cold water. We didn't have to take it down where it was cooler in the basement, and and we used to like the Iceman, though. He'd come from the bar truck and he'd come into town, and kids would all run and holler, "Can we have ice? Can we have ice?" And then he would chip off a piece of ice, you know, and give us all the kids a little piece of ice, and we thought that was really great, and we loved that.
Mm-hmm.
That was almost better than ice cream.
And that was during the Depression also?
Oh yeah, yeah. It was a hard life, but a good life.
Do you remember when things started changing? When things got easier, or?
Oh yeah, I can remember when the stores got more things in that you could get, you know, and we get, you know, Kedder stores got cookies, or you know, and everybody would want to run up there and get whatever they had, you know, and yeah, I can remember that. It was a happy time too. And they got candy back in, you know, like licorice and all that, you know. Couldn't get that during the war, you know. You didn't have we called it the penny candy, but you don't have penny candy anymore.
Do you remember the men coming home from leave?
Yeah.
They come into town?
Yeah. Yeah, they would come to church, you know. We get to all see them then. Yeah. Yeah, I remember, and the word would come, another one had fallen, and at that time they would ring the church bell and toll. You know, and I can remember them, they'd stop whatever they were doing and count the tolls to see who had passed away and you know, how old they were, and you could kind of tell, you know, maybe that was so-and-so now, you know. But, yeah.
Do you remember when the war was over?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like, what kind of celebrations?
Well, I can remember the high school band from Beach City came up and played on the square, and people danced, and they had bells, the church bells rang, people were just clear, you know, so glad, so thankful that it was over.
Do you remember how long it took before the men to come?
We thought, you know, that was the funny part. You thought, oh boy, the guys will come home from the service, but it took it took so long, I thought, for them till they finally started coming, getting back. But
They probably felt the same way.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Do you remember anybody having a problem when they came home?
No, not really. I guess if they did, I didn't hear or didn't know about it. But,
The community supported them pretty
oh
well
yeah,
when they came back?
oh yeah. They was welcomed home with open arms. Yeah. Don't ever take your freedom for granted. Boy, I'd never. And never give it up.